Last year, my boss decided that 3 job titles wasn't enough for me and that I should really have a 4th and possibly a 5th. He asked me to look at our net zero strategy across the group and see where our waste streams were coming from and how we were using those waste streams and disposing of them. My first question was, am I really that person to be asking those questions? The second question was, really, have I got any experience in that sector? No, definitely not. The more important question that came to light was, really, had the boss finally lost the plot? I grew up in the throwaway generation. When my kids came along, they grew up in the supermarket generation. My children have now gone on to college and university, and I seem to be now in the recycling generation. So I've experienced quite a lot in my time. We recycle at home, as everybody hopefully does. So I knew a little bit about segregating different types of waste in your own household. We use our food waste, goes on the composting. We use that compost to sometimes pretty unsuccessfully grow our own veg in our own garden. So my name's Greg, and I'm from AW Group, and we're quite a big construction company that work across projects on the rail and retail consumer market right across the UK. And I'm going to tell you about my personal journey into timber recycling and how we managed to divert as much as possible away from landfill. Now, sustainability is a huge topic, and it's an even bigger topic when you're in the construction industry. Everything we do is focused around sustainability. And the timber that we have and use within our projects, either taking it out of refurbishment projects or using timber to go back into those projects, produces timber waste. In the UK, we import nearly 5 million cubic metres of timber each year. And yet timber still is one of the most sustainable products to build with. A piece of timber like this could have travelled thousands of miles to get here. It's probably created a huge carbon footprint and emissions before it reaches the soil here in the UK. And what we wanted to try and do was think of ways in which we could use that timber. And when you think of 5 million cubic metres of timber, it's really hard to put that into any context which I could truly understand. So I asked one of our really clever guys at work, who's a QS, quantity surveyor. They're used to dealing with figures all day long. What could I relate that to? So he quite simply said, put it into a liquid form. So okay, 5 million cubic metres, I'll let him do the maths. That's what they get paid for. So if I was to tell you 5 million cubic metres of timber is the equivalent of 8.8 billion pints of beer. Now it's estimated that in the UK, in the construction sector, we waste about 20% of that 5 million cubic metres of imported timber. Now I'm sure if I said to Daniel, would you waste 20% of the beer you currently hold in your cellar? I'm sure he'd probably have heart failure. And it's a big problem, a really big problem in the construction industry. Not only is it bad, not good for business, but it's pretty bad for the environment. So we were thinking of what we could do. So this piece of timber, if you were to go and buy this today in B&Q or Homebase or any other DIY store this afternoon, after you finished here, at this length, it will cost you approximately £1. Okay, so that's one of these coins here. Bit of timber, easy to throw away, not necessarily easy to throw away the pound these days. On an average week, we could get back 500 pieces of this timber. And that's 500 of those. So in that picture there is probably worth about 500 to 700 pounds worth of material. That's when we realised that a waste product actually has a value. And it's at that point where the old light bulb moment occurs, and you're sitting there thinking, are we really wasting £500 worth of timber potentially every single week? And that could equate to days as well. When you do the maths and extrapolate that over the year, well, it's quite a lot. When I started this journey, it wasn't just about, saving waste. When we suddenly realised how much money we could save, it was not only going to be good for us as a company, but it could potentially be really good for our clients that we work for, improving their own sustainability policies and their own processes in regard to waste disposal. So what did we do? We did lots of things, and I really can't go into all of those today, but there are three key things that we did. Firstly, we tried to think about how we could identify usage for that timber that's coming out of those construction projects in our own day-to-day business activities. We've got a lot of vehicles on the road, probably between 50 and 70 at any day of the week. All of those vehicles are kitted out so that they can contain the tools that our guys use on the job every single day. Unbelievably, we actually buy specialist racking kits that go into those vans that were made out of timber. Unbelievably, we also employ a lot of carpenters. So at our yard, vans, carpenters, stack of timber. It then became a sort of thing, well, we've got all this product here, we'll start using it in our day-to-day activities. And so that's what we did. We started thinking about how could we start repurposing this timber back into our own projects. And there are reasons why you see that big pile of timber, which we really haven't got time to go into today. But that was the first step. And there's other steps that we've used in repurposing that timber into our daily business activities. The second step was how we normally dispose of that timber. Now normally it would go back to our yard, it would get put in skips and then get taken away. Asking construction workers to fill up a skip in a neat and tidy manner is almost impossible. Skips provide a great opportunity for immense amounts of void space, wasted space. Your average construction worker will just throw it in, job done, off he's gone and he's gone home. Even when those skips are full, trying to get that waste back out to try and sort it out is difficult as well. So what we did, we decided to do away with skips and actually create segregated sections of our yard where the guys could stack the timber or rubble or metal which comes back from projects. By doing that and actually showing them that if you actually stack it in a nice neat pile, it's easier to use should you actually want another piece of timber, we suddenly had this another light bulb moment when all the guys were actually putting their waste in nice neat little piles for us. Great. Once a skip is full, it's really heavy to move about. So having it in a segregated area, it stays in that space. They know where to put that. Now the third thing, and perhaps the most exciting thing that we discovered purely by chance at a networking meeting, was this wonderful thing called community wood recycling, which we'd never heard of, never had any experience of at all. Now community wood recycling is just that. It's using a local community company to come and take your waste wood away and use it within their local community. When we started looking at them and we started talking to people, we discovered a really great one here in Kent. It's called woodpeckers. So woodpeckers timber, yeah. Woodpeckers make use of discarded trees, stuff like that. So we started speaking to Eric at Woodpeckers, and unfortunately he's sitting here today. Don't engage him in any subject about wood, he will never stop. The great thing about working with the community wood recycling companies is they come and get your material and they take it away and they stack it in their vehicle in a really good, orderly fashion. So you get more timber away from your site than you would do traditionally if you had it in a skip, which saves us money, definitely, but it also has a community benefit. Eric has a great team of volunteers that come and help him gather this timber and then make use of it afterwards. And it's not just volunteers, it's volunteers from marginalised groups of society. So it's people with disabilities, people that might find it difficult to get a mainstream job, or people that may find it difficult to make friends. So he engages with these people at his workshop and they make a whole host of stuff out of timber. And there's just an example here, bird boxes, benches, garden planters, and so on. If it can be made of timber, then they'll give it a damn good try. So that not only gives us an environmental benefit, but it also gave us a social benefit as well. And that was just the start. Inspired by what Eric does with his projects and others which we were engaged with over the past year, here in Folkestone and across Kent, and we got to meet a fabulous selection of people. A lot of them are here today. There's Richard from KCC and other people. We wanted to see what else we could do locally here in Folkestone with other communities, around us, which we actually found really difficult to contact and actually find them by either Facebook or LinkedIn or good old-fashioned Google. So what did we do? Well, we diverted non-second use pallets to local community gardens for them to use in raised beds, in compost heaps, to make benches. We contacted other heritage projects locally to us. And so now a lot of our timber goes to a fabulous project up on the White Cliffs of Dover, where they're unearthing huge amounts of military stuff that's been buried in the ground for the past 50, 60, 70 years. We then started ringing around colleges and schools and saying, do you teach woodwork? Do you teach carpentry? Do you teach bricklaying? And they're all saying yes. Would you like some wood? And they're all saying yes. So now we're diverting timber that's coming out of refurbishment projects or strip out projects, into schools, into colleges, and into those trades that eventually, hopefully, on an apprenticeship, we can take on and use within our business. Over the past year, I've learned quite a lot, and by talking to people, I've gained quite a lot of knowledge. Never going to be as knowledgeable as some of the people sitting here in this room. But what it has enabled us to do, and I feel very privileged at this point, is I've been asked to go out to a lot of schools and talk about sustainability, talk about recycling, talk about upcycling, the circular economy and more. It was at one of these schools, actually where I live in the village, after I'd given my presentation about recycling, not just timber but other aspects of your everyday life, and we'd actually worked on a project in the village anyway, so they'd seen all our vans driving around. There was a really shy little girl sitting in the audience who was desperate to ask a question. And it was really quite simple. She said to, and this took a little bit of coaxing to get it out of her, she said, I've got a bed that's made of wood at home, and my mum and dad are going to buy me a new one. What can I do with that timber from that bed? So there was a bit of a pause, and then 30 8-year-olds suddenly started bombarding you with all sorts of suggestions on how that bed could be reused. Not only because it was made of wood, could they make their own bird boxes? But more importantly, what they were thinking about was, could I give that bed to someone else? It was perfectly usable, there's nothing wrong with it, but could I give that bed to someone else, maybe less fortunate than myself, to use? Could I stick it on Facebook Marketplace, sell it, and make myself some pocket money? So what we'd like to do is we'd like to hear from more community and organisations, more schools, about how we can divert timber waste, or not diverting it, reuse timber waste back into their everyday practices. And as I said, sometimes it's really hard for us to find those groups. We've contacted so many around Folkestone and never got a single reply. And we've contacted lots of schools and never got a single reply. Sometimes I think people think there's always going to be a catch. Well, there isn't. We have tons and tons of this material sitting in our yard here at Folkestone. And one example is this. Since I've been part of this great Sustainable Futures Forum with Lou and all the other participants, Ed, Flo, Leonie, Ruth, the shed down at Bradstone Avenue is right near the viaduct. I can't tell you how many times our guys have scoured that viaduct to do repairs on it. So we managed to donate some of this material down to Ruth for her team to use in making whatever they needed to make out of it. There was lots of pallets, bricks. But it was by talking with people like Ruth, when we actually invited them down to our yard to see what sort of material we had, all of a sudden she was saying, oh, well, we could use that. Oh, and we can use that as well. So it wasn't just about recycling timber, it was about other people identifying uses for material that were sitting in our skips, and some of these skips are huge, they're 20, 40 yard skips. There's lots of material in there. So she was identifying other stuff which we now keep to one side and then can hopefully pass on to other community organisations. Within a year, I've gone from that person who grew up in the throwaway generation, the supermarket generation, and now crazily in the recycling generation, to thinking about every opportunity to use the waste that comes out from our construction projects. We continue to address the traditional throwaway culture. I can't tell you how hard it is to tell the teams that we employ, do not go to Screwfix to buy a box of screws when we know you've got 200 screws sitting in your van. You know, do not go to Jewson's to buy a piece of timber when we know that that piece of timber is in the back of your van. So it's breaking that traditional culture as well, and it's an education process. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to encourage our guys to think the same way. We don't want to be saying you must do it. You know, you're the guys that are out on site. You know, our teams are out on site every day doing this work. You know, how can you sort of, you know, cut down on the amount of waste that comes out of projects, especially with timber. It's also getting businesses to think about sustainability. If you are in that position like I was a year ago, completely and utterly terrified, don't. Yes, it is quite a daunting experience, but I can guarantee you will have a lot of fun along the way. You will learn huge amounts. You will meet some very interesting people. More importantly, the people that I've met on this journey have now become firm friends. So it's not just about a business thing, it's about a personal thing as well. We want to try and educate the next generation by going out and talking to them, and try and give people the confidence to take on the sustainability hat, the hat that I was very reluctant to have. If you ask me what I'd like to put on my business card today, you can forget the marketing bit, you can forget the business development bit, you can forget the tender writer, bid writer bit, but I'll happily stick the sustainability lead on it. Okay.